Awesome. All right. Welcome, everyone. John Laster here with the Manual Save podcast, joined by Justin Connors, creative director of 8 Prime Esports, as well as David Andrade of Theory Studios.
Hey. Glad to be here.
Hello.
Now, glad to have you here as well. Super excited to kind of talk about your background because you have a really unique one, having worked in a lot of professional TV shows and movies and commercials, and then kind of pivoting into games this past year during the pandemic, correct?
Oh, for sure. It's funny. This is year 8 that I dove into this as my own business, but if you count all the way from when I was doing it professionally in college, gosh, we're at just under 20 years, 19 years. So,
oh wow,
kind of crazy.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do with Theory Studios?
Yeah, sure. We're a multidisciplinary media company. Our biggest focus right now is animation for theme parks and video games, really particularly virtual reality stuff. But in a whole, we work on a lot of crazy projects. In our past, we've had the pleasure of working on Man in the High Castle, which is a big-time Amazon show, one of the first to start getting Emmy nominations right when Prime was debuting, to more recently working with Sesame Street on animated shows for them. And one thing I'm very proud of, right as the pandemic was about to hit, a new ride premiered at Universal Studios Orlando, the Bourne Stunt-tacular, and we helped do some of the animation for the intro while you're waiting and getting ready to sit down and everything. So really excited to have such a wide gamut of stuff. And you're right, somewhere in there, we just decided to make a VR game amongst all of that.
No, that's awesome. So how did you get started doing all of that? Like, how did you get started in that industry?
That's a good question. I made mods, so that was kind of my beginning. I was kind of in that early Quake generation where people were modding it and doing fun stuff with it. So one day, actually, if you want the longer story, it was Hurricane Andrew, I believe, had hit and closed schools everywhere in Florida. And I had an acquired version of 3D Studio and Photoshop. And I was home for like 3 weeks. And at the end of those 3 weeks, I knew how to use 3D Studio and Photoshop. Mind you, I don't think it was 3D Studio Max. I don't think Max is a thing yet.
I'm a little jealous because, like, when I was growing up, we got hit by 4 hurricanes, I think my sophomore year of high school.
Yeah.
We just lost power for 3 weeks. So I sat and read books.
Oh,
by
smart.
Candlelight. I literally read books by candlelight because there was not much else to do. Oh. Ironically enough, I'm pretty sure it was the Bourne Identity like series in a sense, so it's kind of funny that you mentioned working on the ride there.
Yeah, little full circle there, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes. You taught yourself Photoshop. It's a little different now, but back in the day, I used to say if you could teach yourself Photoshop, you could probably teach yourself almost any program. You just got to start with that one, and then from that everything's
it's like driving.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or riding a bike, even. Once you can ride a bike or whatever. My parents used to say, if you can drive in New York, you can drive anywhere in the world, and it's been a very accurate statement. So yeah, dovetail from that. I learned it, and there was a very, very young but excited mod community. And then it was Half-Life and their mod tools that really opened and paved the way. And now we're in high school making mods, and there's the Make Something Unreal contest that was really quite popular in the early 2000s. And I just entered all of those, and fast forward, gosh, I don't know. How many years has it been? 21 now? 22, however many years it's been since Hurricane Andrew. I've just been living in 3D since. And loved it. Loved everything about it. A little bit more formal background. I went to University of Tampa, so neat little school. Learned about economics and art history. Nothing to do with 3D, but it was still fun. And then I took Animation Mentor. That was I think it was 2006 is when they debuted, and I was really lucky to get on the ground floor with that class. The first class to graduate, so that was really quite exciting. The back when working remotely was a weird thing in 2006. They had a whole system set up for, this is pre-Dropbox and Zoom, by the way, is a whole system set up to like learn and animate and get feedback and everything all remotely working on animation. So that was awesome. That was really credit that to opening up a lot of doors. And it was the inspiration to wrap up the story. It was the inspiration of working remotely, learning remotely through Animation Mentor that led years later when I wanted to start a business is I wanted to do it remotely. I had so many of my friends who I met there, and still two of them rather are my co-founders, and many others are my employees. We just really love the remote lifestyle back in 2007. And so when we started this business in 2013, it was really important to us because we were all so scattered because the world of animation scatters you around the world. It was really important to us to keep it remote, and been like that since. Now the whole world is remote.
That makes a ton of sense for me too, just from my perspective. That I always get told art is something that games scale up on really, really heavily toward the end of the cycle, but then they immediately downsize.
Yeah, for sure.
So the ability to have remote work just really helps with that transition between projects without having to completely uproot yourself and move to a new location.
One would hope that it sticks around. Having done both TV, theme park, not both, actually, there's many here, TV, theme park, movies, and now games. Both when I worked at High Moon Studios for a year or two, and then a bunch of other places in the movie and TV world. But having done all of those like major media entertainment enterprises, it's really the games industry that is remote and has been. Like they've for the most part, I know AAA Studios are a little harder, but even then they outsource quite a bit. And they've always kind of outsourced. And you're right about the art, because it's so expensive to keep such a crew, and you only need it for a short amount of time relative to game production. Something we experienced ourselves. Who would have thought? But you kind of want to solve all of your art at the end, but that's also when you need to get it done. So you need a lot of artists all of a sudden. So I get it. But yeah, no other industry, TV, film, theme parks, like they didn't really grasp the whole remote work-life thing. It's just not. It's actually quite the reverse. It's crunch all the time, at least in the movie world, especially. And it the pandemic certainly changed a lot of that, hopefully for better. But if anyone's really curious, I did a talk with a animation director in 2011 or 12 at SIGGRAPH, big graphics conference in LA. We did a talk where we hypothesized what the world of the future would look like when animation was being made remotely, and the structure and the pipeline and everything. It was like an hour-long talk. It was very well attended, and the YouTube was, it's okay. Had like 1,000 views years ago. And obviously that exploded last year, and we've gotten a horde of email of how to do it. Now everybody knows how to do it, so now it's easy. But it's just interesting, like when you finally had to do it. And it's funny considering like working on Marvel movies, you're not even allowed to have your own phone or USB devices. Like computer cannot have a USB device, plug in. It's all got to be sectioned off the internet. So much control to work on a Marvel movie. And yet, now you render in the cloud, you animate in the cloud. So it's just funny, interesting switch that we've gone through.
I can totally see that. And I mean, like, I know even from my experience with games, there always was a lot of panic of like, well, can we let people take this home? Will people find out about it? Is it going to make it more or less secure, obviously. And I mean, with games in particular, one of the struggles I've always been told is the uploads. When you're trying to upload and download new builds constantly, the problem is a lot of us just don't have the internet infrastructure yet, which kind of ties into a question I'd really love to hear from you is, so since you guys were already remote back in 2013, what kind of struggles were you dealing with there where the rest of the world just hadn't caught up?
That's a good one, because you're right that happens. And we came up with a concept, and fun, just kind of stumbled upon it, and now it's quite popular, where you just sectioned off things, where you only downloaded what you needed to download, and Animator would only get what they needed. We were very quick to move stuff to Amazon. We used to host it, and then we just put it on AWS. And I did talks with AWS about how they saved us during a hurricane once. Hurricanes are a really important part of the story, it seems. So it was Hurricane Michael. I think it was Matthew. It's one of the M's. And power went down, everything went down, but we had a major shot to deliver for Man in the High Castle. Giant, important shot that would go on to get nominated for a VES award. Well, we didn't know that at the time. We just had to get it done, and we're just the 3D artists. So thankfully, we had switched everything to AWS, and it rendered and delivered, and it was all painless, even though not a single one of my artists, including myself, had power because, Florida had no power when a giant hurricane rips right through it. And it's just really awesome to do that. So moving to AWS is a big thing. And now we play between Google Cloud and AWS. Sometimes one's cheaper for one thing or the other. So that was really helpful. That sectioning off what people can use. We did ride the tide up, though, because so many people have had internet upgrades, especially in the last year, that the infrastructure has gotten better. So that's helped out quite a bit. But unfortunately, sometimes you just got to suffer. We work with a few artists that are in South America, and the internet's a lot better, but one of them's like deep in the city that's surrounded by the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. And it's a city nonetheless, but it's like the middle of nowhere for us, right? But it's surrounded by forest everywhere. So, and yet, somehow with okay internet, he's still able to make it by, and it's just being smart and clever about what people can download, and you just suffer. You overnight stuff, that often is the biggest thing. Also, FedEx, we've had it deliver sometimes 100 terabytes of data to a client, and it's actually faster to mail that overnight.
I found that absolutely fascinating. When I was doing that about 3 or 4 years ago, I was having someone video edit for me, and I was having an easier time buying a hard drive and mailing it than trying to upload it. Because again, where I was at, I could only do 10, 12 upload. So for me to give him the size files I was giving him, because I was just giving him a massive dump of my gameplay and being like, go find the good stuff, and it was just it was way easier to just pay to ship it, pay to buy a new hard drive, have him send it back when he's done, and just cycle through a few that way. And it was just absolutely crazy to me.
Rather than
actually use the internet, it's like there's something just funky to me about the idea that the post office is the fastest thing we actually have.
Latency is really crappy, but the throughput can be great. So no, I get it. So that's kind of what we've done. We've ridden the tide, thankfully, with infrastructure improving. I don't know if it's still up there, but my face used to be on the Zoom website. We did a little talk about how awesome Zoom is. I got to meet Eric Yoon way before he became a bazillionaire and famous, and we were like early beta testers, and his story is really cool. I don't know if it's public. He's the founder and CEO of Zoom. He wanted a better way to talk to his girlfriend, and while he did work for a big company that made video software, some of us may not remember how awful video conferencing was pre-pandemic. And it was like, can you hear me? Oh, this is working. You got to plug in this thing, got to do it. But some of us just may not remember how terrible it was.
I just remember old school Skype calls where
Skype was the thing. Yeah.
Literally, it was like, okay, I'm going to call you by Skype. And then the immediate reaction was, can we use anything else?
Yeah.
And the problem was, for a while, that was the platform. I remember Discord kind of took over for me on most of my stuff, but that's more recent. And then even back in the day, like Google Video is like leaps and bounds better now than it was, 5 years ago,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Discord, and that's an awesome piece of software, but yeah, you're right. We were all in the era of Skype. I don't know about you guys, but I don't even run Skype anymore. Kind of weirdly. I haven't run Skype. What's that?
No, I don't remember the last time I used Skype. It's been.
Does it even exist? I thought it got
No, it
moved
does.
into Teams. Like I thought it was like one of those things that kind of got sunset and just moved the product.
The last message sent on Skype was October 21st, 2020. But before then was February 13th, 2020. So
oh wow,
Skype did not survive the pandemic, I don't think. Oh man. So it is what it is. But yeah, so Zoom's been a big help. Slack has been a giant help. I really, really enjoy Slack too. Discord's great. No problems with Discord. I think Slack offers a few more like enterprisey, businessy tools, and the integrations are just really nice. And plus, I think just psychologically, you just feel like you're in an office, and then Discord's you're hanging out with your friends. So there's a nice difference there. That's how we do it, at least.
That's how a lot of the companies I work with do it. They have a private company-wide Slack, and then a more public kind of community-facing Discord. And one of the benefits there is it also keeps you from accidentally typing in the wrong chat room. Especially if you're like me and you leave Slack on like light mode and Discord's on dark mode. So it's like you ain't gonna mix them up. It's really hard.
man. Oh, that's smart. Yeah, we have like a lot of alumni that have come through the studio over the years, and so Discord serves as like a way to hang out and do stuff on there. So that's been kind of nice. But yeah, I hope this sticks. I was reading that there's a lot of people who want people back in the office, and there's benefits. Obviously, there's giant benefits for that. And I do miss the creative collaboration that you can get hanging out and turn next to somebody and say something. That's tough to get in a isolated, remote kind of workspace.
Literally what I was going to ask you next is because like when I talk to people, they always highlight the spontaneous creative nature of a lot of jobs as why they want people back in offices.
100%.
And you're telling me you work 100% more or less remote since 2013 in a very creative field. So, how do you guys kind of balance that, and how do you still find the ability to kind of have those creative brainstorming sessions?
You force them in a way. You have like literal meetings dedicated to just accomplishing no goal. You just hang out and work together. So we have an always on Zoom thing that we all pop into and work. But what's funny is that like it comes in spurts. So we have set like hangout times every day, and in that way some people can come in maybe just to chat for a little bit. Some people will come in to ask questions to show what they're doing. Then we have like our more formal ones, like Mondays and Fridays, where we all present what we're doing and how the sprint went and everything. But like this morning, for example, me and one of the other developers, we just hung out for like almost 3 hours and working through stuff. And it's, you hear somebody on the side and it's kind of like someone's there, and it could be kind of spontaneous. We used to do a lot of gaming too, where a handful of us would all just get on and game together and hang out. That was really quite fun. That I think since this last 6 months, we've been so focused on making said game that we haven't actually had time to do anything else. And when I get away from a computer, it's kind of interesting. We've been really encouraging people to get away, which leads me to my last point. Pre-pandemic, and actually just recently, we try to get people together. We try to do get-togethers. And that, while it's not as great as always being able to get together, at least half a year, sometimes every quarter. Recently, a handful of artists are doing a get-together, and they're hiking the Grand Canyon. So we just wrapped a big theme park project, and they all went out to go to the Grand Canyon, and we'll cover the dinner and stuff and let them have fun. And it's a way to like cool off and recharge and enjoy. But yeah, that's kind of what we did. The movie that we worked on, there's a local Florida movie called Because of Charlie. A bunch of us went to the premiere, and that was really quite fun. That was the first get together post-pandemic. Right before the pandemic, we went to one of the rehearsals for Because of Charlie over here in Orlando, and we had like 10 or 12 people fly in and got a hotels and everything, and like 3 days of just joy. We went to the parks, we ate, hung out, and did that for a few days, and it was really recharging. And in that space where your goal is to accomplish nothing, you do so much, and it's really great. So it's been a little bummer with the pandemic. We haven't been able to physically get together as much, but it's slowly starting. But yeah, that's really the biggest way to do it. That's how we've been able to do it. And, yeah.
Are you guys mostly regionally based around both Orlando and I believe it's a city in Canada?
It used to be. It's kind of sprawled. A bunch of them moved to Tampa, so 2 of them live in a house in Tampa. This is kind of cool. Then we've got folks in Alberta, Canada is the region. The city is Calgary. Forgot it for a second. So Calgary is a couple there. South America, 1 in Brazil, 1 in Argentina, and then Texas. There's a handful throughout Texas and kind of like that western kind of belt. Texas, California, Arizona, just scattered throughout there. 1 in Japan, which is really quite cool. But I think my favorite is the guy from our sound and musician, Caleb. Super talented guy. He lives in like the middle of the woods somewhere in Canada. I have no idea where. In like those shipping containers that you can turn into homes.
I don't think you're allowed to know where.
Yeah. He gets like internet from like some tower that he has to aim his thing to. It's like line of sight internet. Yeah. Moose antlers, they carry it. It's so weird
that are like that.
Yeah, that's beyond awesome to me.
Yeah, in a shipping container. But he's like, I have everything I need. I was like, wow.
Well, that's the cool thing about the remote lifestyle is you no longer have to live in a cluster in San Francisco. If you can live in the middle of nowhere, in the wilderness, just enjoy kind of a beautiful area, and you don't have to stress about the fact that you would have a 4-hour commute doing that,
Yeah, exactly. And as I kind of look back on a lot of this stuff, I think to myself, I work a ton, right? So I hang out with Sarah and my almost 2-year-old, 1 more month, and 2 months, sorry. So hang out with her up until 9:30, drop her off at her grandma's, my in-laws, work till 6, pick her up, and then I go back to work at 9-ish till about midnight. And so I do work at night. I do work during the day, and it is a lot of work, admittedly. But then I think back to thank God I had a short commute living in LA. It almost worked at every time that my contract was up. It was a year, so my lease was up or my rental release or whatever. So I don't care. I'd pay more to live closer to the studio so I wouldn't have to. So I never had a big commute, 5-10 minutes, not like the hours commute that people have in LA.
Yeah, I have a 50-minute commute.
No,
because I live on the beach and then I drive to Orlando.
Okay, that's fair. That's worth it. That's good. But anyways, my point is you're working on a movie or a TV show or a game, you're doing 12 plus hours, and then you get home and I got to shower. And at the time I was single, so I didn't have family, kid, or anything. I think to it now, I do work about 12 hours a day too, right now, but I can take a whole morning off and I can take the whole, time off with kid and dinner and my wife and enjoy it. And the remote lifestyle allows you to do that, to just take whole sections off, or, in our case, a lot of people will say, I'm taking Friday off. I just need a day to recharge. Well, also you see that they've done 40 hours in 4 days. So yeah, take Friday off. Why not? And we don't micromanage people like that. We just request that you let us know a little bit ahead of time. You just don't disappear. And honestly, everyone's really good about it. And allowing people to have that time to just take it off and enjoy. Work-life balance. Some people get it wrong, but you just find yourself overworking too much, So I'm trying to encourage the opposite. I think you should work to live, not live to work. So I think working remotely gets you closer to that, where you can work to live. But that's my hope, at least.
Yeah, I personally love the idea of just being able to pick your own hours as long as you get your stuff done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As long as you meet all your deadlines, that gives you that flexibility to be like, okay, I'm not a morning person, but I do all my best creative thinking at like 2 a.m, and it's like, okay, you can do that, as long as your stuff gets done, no one's going to complain. Obviously you have to have like some kind of core hours where it's like you need to be available for meetings if they're,
Yeah.
needed and stuff. But like just giving people that flexibility to like work within their own like strengths and weaknesses a little better. We actually had a guy on earlier during the pandemic who worked in HR, and his big thing was he was saying everybody always writes on all their job applications, I want an independent thinker. And he's like, well, now you get to really challenge that. You want someone who works independently. The pandemic is forcing you to let people work independently now. So let's see if you actually mean what you've been saying, and it's kind of cool to see how, for the most part, most of the companies I've worked with have honestly done very, very well with kind of a more flexible remote scheduling,
I hope it sticks. I'm a little fearful. I'm sure some of you saw how there's a pushback from Apple where like, okay, everyone's coming back in September. And they're like, I don't know about that. I don't know if we want to come back in September. So I'm hopeful. I really am that that we keep it. I know a lot of businesses probably don't want to keep it because they've spent so much on leases and everything, and there are clear benefits, but I don't know. At least I'm part of the generation that loves working remotely and everything. Like, you got to think that anybody under, say, 45 or so in the past, like 2 decades, 3 decades, we've gone through so much. We might as well start crafting the future that we want. I want to work remotely. I want to get paid well. I want to live in a shipping container in the middle of the forest, right? Just start crafting the future we want, not being dictated by the future that we were told it was going to be. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of where that is. And so we've stuck with it for many, many years, and we're quite happy about it. But now going forward, we'll obviously still stick to it and be with that. And in terms of like business, working on games and animation is quite fun. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of weird to say that that's what we do, but that's what we do. So it's really fun to say that that's what you want to do in life and actually be able to do it.
I always enjoy the fact that I get to walk into a room and say I'm an attorney that works with video game and tech companies and now sports cards, and that's like my big 3 client bases. And people always give me like the weirdest side eye, but I'm like, no, like I love it. It's like, that's such a good feeling to get to do something you love, in an industry you love,
It's been an element. I was actually talking to this morning actually, to one of the co-developers, and it's kind of interesting where some people, I'm sure many people actually know, it's very difficult to break into any of the media industries, right? Because it's such an uphill battle and climb. And yet there's this phrase I heard a lot when I lived in LA, and I couch surfed a lot there too, so I got to meet some interesting characters throughout my life, and one of them was a really top photographer, and he always used to tell me that LA is a place where there are 100 parking spots and 1,000 people trying to park in them, and you need to make your own damn spot. And I like that. That took a little while to get there. And then the second phrase that I'll never forget that Peter told me was the LA is the city of the long no, which I also think is really appropriate. You'll get like 30 no's before you get a yes. But the first one really is key to me. And who knows who might be listening to this in the future, but the make your own spot, I think it's so easy too at this point. You should make your own spot. You could chase trying to work for a big company, and there might be some real big benefit to that. But man, to be able to make your own game, like just fire up Unreal or Unity or Godot, watch a tutorial for an hour, and bang out, the next Flappy Bird in a weekend. It's totally possible now. A lot harder back then, but totally possible today.
Well, and even just kind of looking at your own background, you started just modding. You just started learning and teaching yourself tools, Like if you're just sending out applications to places that go into the void of the internet, and then 99% of the time you never get a reply. You know, you're better off kind of working on your own portfolio at least, you know, and coming up with stuff that you can show people and catch people's attention with, you know, especially if you want to be an artist or, you know, something of that nature. You know, they always want to see what you're doing.
There's almost, I would even challenge part of trying to send applications out. So when you take the LA Orlando flight a lot, as I have for many years now, you'll meet a lot of interesting people on that flight who want to come to Orlando because, you know, Disney World, and they all work in some sort of media. So one of these flights I sat down next to and talked for like 4 hours, however long that flight is. He was like one of the lead designers of Overwatch, and him and the whole family were flying over. And we talked about like how he got started and everything. And out of college, his plan was, rather than applying to a game company because so many of them wanted to see demo code or anything, he's just going to make a game company. And they made games, and that's it. That's him and a buddy. I think there's 3 of them. They just made a bunch of games. And eventually Blizzard just bought them. You know, they were small. So it was like an acqui-hire, if you will. But, you know, they're successful, and they had a lot of pedigree and everything, but they were young, but they also had by that time like 6 or 7 years of experience because they had been shipping games since they were through college and everything as a business. So it feels real and everything, you know, and they just bought them. And, you know, he's been with Blizzard since. And I just always thought that, that was so interesting because so much of, at least when I was in college in the early 2000s, it was always, you know, polish the resume and make it look good and everything. And you apply to a billion places. You guys may not know this, but as I never really went to GDC until fairly recently, but SIGGRAPH, the animation equivalent, they used to have these giant bins where you would just throw into the void, literally throw into the void, if you will. In 2003, so my first year I went, in fact, you had like a VHS, or if you were really cutting edge, you had a DVD. You know, you had a disc, and you would just throw the damn thing into the giant bin next to Disney or Pixar or Blue Sky or whoever at the time recruiting, you know, at the job fair at SIGGRAPH. And, you know, it's so soul crushing because it's like those bins that you fill up for all the leaves in the fall to then throw away. So it's ginormous, and it's just piled high with discs. And, you know, every single person on there has worked so hard on their demo reel, their portfolio, and you're just another floppy disk on this, you know, floppy nightmare.
Yeah, it's always been something that I feel like is still ripe for some level of innovation, just because it's not an efficient process.
No.
To the point that I have clients that talk to me a decent bit about what you were just talking about and going out and scouting to acqui-hire, because the reality is like finding talented individuals is not very easy, especially when, you know, into the abyss, when you put up a job listing, you get 50,000 applications, and figuring out which ones are good is not actually as easy as it sounds, you know. So it gets difficult.
Or making people write what are they called, cover
letters
when nobody reads a cover letter. You know what I mean? Like whenever a job's like, please do your cover letter, it's like nobody reads those things. You know what I mean? Like it's such an antiquated method of hiring people at this point.
At the end of the day, 90% of hiring that I've been involved with always comes down to somebody at the company already knew somebody.
Yeah.
And just kind of was like, hey, pull that name out of the void and then take a look at the resume. And if the resume is good, then it's like, cool. You know,
work has to speak for itself, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the work still has to be good. It's not like they're just going to hire someone because they know somebody most of the time, you know?
I always heard that it was, you know, who you know, right? I'm sure we've all heard that phrase and just mentioned it. And it's funny, it's like people freak out when you hear that phrase, but no one like actually completes the damn thing, which is, so it's who you know. So go start meeting a lot of people so you know a lot of people, right? Like we never forget, like so many of us just stop at like, well, it's who you know. Well, I don't know anybody, so I guess I'm screwed. Well, just go meet people, go to a party. You know, that like GDC and SIGGRAPH parties are exactly where most people should be to just meet.
The one nice thing about the pandemic is the fact that so many of those things became virtual this year. you know, so because of the fact that it's so difficult if you're not at a certain level of affluence to maybe get from Florida to San Francisco for a week for a GDC,
Fair.
there were
Yeah.
plenty of web-based events. I sat in one last Wednesday that was meant to kind of simulate the fact that we all missed E3, where they just did breakout sessions. So what they did was they literally had a Zoom call with about 1,000 people on it, and then they broke us off into a call kind of like this with 5 people, and we just talked for 20 minutes, you know, just kind of introduce yourselves, kind of meet people. And I mean, I got to meet people from some really cool companies that way. And, you know, there's stuff out there. And I mean, at least for me, I was always told it's not just who you know, but also kind of who knows you. Because it's one thing to be able to say like, oh, I know this person, but do they know who you are too? You know, it's kind of like you need to build a full relationship, not just kind of be aware of someone, you know?
I completely agree. And you say something that made me think that one of my favorite conferences this year was the Steamworks Developer Conference, where they did the exact thing. I mean, not using Zoom, but using their own system. Everyone's hanging out, and then suddenly it all got broken up into rooms where some Steam business dev person and like 12 other developers, we just hung out together for half an hour. And that cycled, I think, for an hour or two. And I loved it. I was like, I think every session, like, okay, well, what do you guys think? Like, do more of this. This is great. First of all, Steam is such a giant void. You have no idea. Like, it'd be nice to meet other people. So this is great. It's a little bit better than Discord because, you know, you feel like you're meeting other professionals and people who have shipped things, people who are totally brand new. But there's a sense of like, okay, we're all here to sell a game on Steam or have sold something on Steam. So we all have at least that kind of baseline to work with. And it was just awesome to video chat and see people. You know, then your cat screaming in the background and it makes it all the better. But for the most part, it was really awesome. And it makes you wonder what 2022 conferences are going to be like. I think we're going to test so much this year. There's a big animation conference in Miami called Kid Screen, and I think it was Monday or Tuesday, they announced that it's going to be in Miami in 2022. We're coming back. So all of us are excited about that. But it does kind of make you wonder, like, what will really happen in the next year. I think we're going to start experimenting and testing. I'm kind of surprised that I'm curious what GDC will do. Let me put it that way. You know, I'm curious what GDC will do. I'm cautiously optimistic about it. So I'm registered. I'm excited to go. So we'll see what happens with it. Last year was pretty interesting. They had the Twitch thing, which was okay. Felt a little last minute. Then the summer one that they had was good, but this one, hopefully we've all learned about virtual conferencing, and they have a few ideas like the breakout thing. Hopefully we can do some of that at this year's coming GDC. So we'll see.
Yeah, I saw that. I think it's PAX West is going to be in person.
Oh, really?
And there's obviously a little bit of pushback on that right now because of the fact that
kids,
again,
Delta
we're still
COVID,
where we are.
Terrible.
And, well, you also got to remember that PAX is probably best known for the PAX Plague or PAX Pox, whatever you want to call it. You know, they're always been known as the conference that everybody gets sick at.
Yeah.
Like, I always get sick somehow at PAX. I mean, I'm carrying like 3 things of hand sanitizer, just like being overly careful. You know?
One would hope that masks are a little bit more socially acceptable. I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of a pushback now against mask wearing because we're like everyone is over it. I mean, I have some cool masks, you know, so hopefully people are just okay with wearing a mask 5 years down the road from now. We're like, oh, he's wearing a mask. He's probably sick or something. So I'll keep my distance. Like, I don't know. Like, I just hope that that's okay. You know, that we don't.
Well, and I've
dream
seen
of the
people
future.
try to like do different things to kind of do exactly that, where it's like, okay, different color wristbands for like, hey, please don't get in my space right now, or you know, like I'm cool with going up and giving you a giant hug, you know, and like those different things for different people sometimes, you know. But I definitely love to talk a little bit more about the fact that you guys during the middle of this pandemic kind of pivoted to start a game. So you can tell us a little bit about that thought process and what that's been like.
Yeah, that was good. There's a Ray Bradbury quote about jumping off a cliff and building your wings on the way down. I always get it wrong, but generally that's what it means. You just jump off and make it make it work on the way down, right? You just figure it out. So we had done little experiments in VR. One of our former art directors, compositing supervisors, he made a VR game that we supported a little bit, and that was OG Vive, and DK2 is when we started working on that and learning. But that was also deep in the middle of a big time of growth for the company where we were working on some pretty high caliber TV shows. So my personal time I couldn't dedicate to it, but a few people were experimenting, and I bought the first Vive. I bought a DK2. Didn't get the first DK1, but came right soon after, and it's so exciting. It's always been like in the periphery, but then like pandemic hits, and we've already been in Unreal for real-time production and doing some prototyping for a theme park where we made the ride in VR so you could look around it. So kind of we're sort of familiar and like, okay, we've touched it and pretty into it. And then I had my background in Activision, so I knew about Unreal 3 and UDK and UE4. So I was like, yeah, this is interesting. But then pandemic hits, and unfortunately we let some people go, and we kind of rethink like, where is this going to go? We were of the mind that this is an 18-month journey. And this is like, and it was like, what was it, March? I think I'll never forget it, but I think it was like 26th or 29th when everything shut down. Anyways, so it was end of March, and we're like, the ride that we had just completed was supposed to have a premiere, but then they shut it all down because of, COVID. So the premiere never happened. And it was just so weird. And we had a couple of big projects that were on the line that also got canceled. So all of this leads to an enormous amount of pressure in April. There's the PPP loan and staying up late to try to figure out like what's next and everything. And then May, which was like, well, what's next? Nothing. We have 18. We think it'll be 18 months before theme parks and TV recover. So what do we do? How do we financially survive? And then what do we do for 18 months? And thought about it. And then we decided, well, we really like Unreal. Let's just start fooling around in Unreal. And we had just done a game jam December of that year. Well, I guess technically previous year. So 2020, was that 2019? Yeah. 2020 was pandemic. So 2019. Yeah. Wow. Sorry. We get your dates wrong for a second. So yeah, December 2019, we had done a game jam. And we're like, well, we have this old game. Like maybe let's just polish it up and see if we can sell it. And that game was Blobkin Blaster, and it was the theme of the game jam was sacrifice. So you had to grab these little guys, stick them into your gun, and shoot and kill enemies. And these little guys functioned as health and ammunition. So it was kind of sad in a way because like they're your people. You have to protect your village. But at the same time, you can't shoot the enemies that are invading without sacrificing one of them into your weapon for ammunition. So they're both your health and your ammo. That's the only concept that stuck. We got rid of the rest. And, fast forward 1 year later, we're completely addicted to Unreal. We dove really deep into VR. We pitched it to PlayStation, and they gave us all of this stuff to help hopefully release it on the PS Store. So one day, knock on wood, we pitched it to Oculus, and we got into the Oculus Start program, and they sent us Quest headsets, a bunch of them actually. So very big kudos to them for all the help. And we've just been inside VR since. It really started in earnest last May. And the few people that we could keep on the team, we just put them all onto this. And I myself taught myself Blueprint, didn't know it. My co-founder's already a C++ programmer, so that helped out tremendously. I just had to understand like Unreal's flavor of it, and just never looked back. And so just last week, we premiered it at the Steam Next Fest in the VR section, and that went really quite well. We broke 750 wish lists. I know some people say you need 1,000, 2,000, 100. I don't know. You know what? To come from nothing to then have 750 people say, I want to get this when it comes out, I'm gonna leave that as a testament and take that as a win. So we had a bunch of people wish list it. We have a bunch of people on the mailing list, and I'm just energized by like, wow, we actually built something out of nothing. So we're going to release it the second week of August 11th. Trying to sandwich it like right before school's starting, but then there's Gamescom and all the other stuff. So we figured like that second week of August might be pretty good. Yeah, we're just going to premiere it on Steam VR and on the Oculus VR store. It's going to be PC VR first, so not Quest standalone, but that'll be something that we work on afterwards. But yeah, it's this cute little game, and the short of it is if you remember Pikmin from way back, right? You had these little characters. They become like your ammunition. You throw them at things, and they like beat the stuff up. So we took that concept, and you have these little Blobkin, cute little characters, and their little village is being invaded by a bunch of monstrous-looking fish. They just come in and start eating them and destroying the buildings and everything. And it's your job to kill the fish and save your village. So it's a wave shooter. There's just, a certain amount, not endless, but a certain amount of waves of enemies coming at you. But to kind of further expand some of the mechanics, we added some real-time strategy elements. So you can build with your Blobkin, your sort of Pikmin. You can build buildings, cannons, defensive structures, anything to kind of help protect that village while at the same time being attacked. So the Blobkins serve many functions. They're your health, because if you lose all of them, the fish eat you and you die immediately. So the one of them flies right at you and gulps and the screen goes black. They're your ammunition. They literally hop into your weapon and you fire them out and they attack your enemies. And they're a little bit like Angry Birds. Each one has like their own kind of superpower. And then they're also your builders. They help construct this village that you're trying to protect. So they all kind of function in multiple little units. And then it's cute because, we make a lot of kid stuff. I mean, Lord, we've been working at Sesame Street for like 4 years now. So there's a very cute, like kids like bend to it. And that's been really important to us. One of the biggest things of feedback people have given us is like, oh yeah, I loved playing it, but my kid really enjoyed it. My 8-year-old, my 11-year-old, whatever, and played it. And that's like, there's a common thread in our test audiences and our feedback surveys. It's been people like that. So it warms our heart because it's like, yeah, this is what we want. Something rather for kids, something rather for adults, and they can kind of share together in this silly hybrid VR wave shooter. So that's Blobkin Blaster in a big nutshell.
Go ahead, Justin.
I would say the thing I love the most just about hearing all of this is that going back to your idea of making your own parking spot, like if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong here, but like you're not using Cinema 4D or 3ds Max or Maya or Foundry. You're using Blender, which I believe is free, and you're using Unreal, which until you sell the game is free, and they're now integrated together. So it's like anybody who really wants to get down on something are using the exact same things you are. You know what I mean? Like it's open, and there's so much information for Blender. I know that for a fact. There's so much information for Unreal that if you wanted to do something, if you wanted to make something, now is the time to get into it. Like it couldn't be any easier than it is right now.
Absolutely. We got nominated for, I say we, because there's also our partners at Barnstorm VFX. They led the show. And knock on wood, I think it was the very first show to have been nominated, but made in rendered out of Blender. And this is the Emmys, So this is like big time. And it was like the first one to do that. So, and that was 2016 when the interface is still a little janky. Now the interface is so polished, and they have that like made something Unreal, Unreal Mega Grants, money and everything. So, it's all looking so good. And yet, now there's like movies. I think recently they had like that Rabbids TV show or something. They had that on the Blender blog. So there's been so much like incredible stuff that's been made with Blender now. It's kind of cool to see its growth. I
got a question for you about that though, because obviously, if you've been doing this long enough, so you've seen all these programs come and go. But Blender, when it started, was like it didn't even have any kind of real like things you did in other programs didn't translate over. You know what I mean? Like it was its own interface. So when did you decide? Okay, I'm gonna go away from the programs I've used to use, and I know Theory says that they're a Blender studio. So when did you decide we're just running Blender?
That was actually very close to day one. now it's different. But in 2013, when we started the business, an Autodesk license is very expensive back then. It might still even be. I don't know. I haven't gone to their website in ages. Yeah, Maya and Max and all that. And don't get me wrong, I started on 3D Studio, which became Max, so I've got a real soft spot for it. But same with like Photoshop and everything. Although Photoshop, admittedly, I think they did the right thing with the Creative Cloud. I know there's a lot of people who are like, but I think the subscription thing, you're going to keep upgrading and buying the license, whatever. It does equal the same cost over the course of 3 years. But I think at least with Creative Cloud, you get a really great bundle of stuff. Mm-hmm. At the time, though, you had to spend a whole bunch of money for an Autodesk license. And, we're not going to like pirate it or anything like that. We wanted to be a real business. So, well, we just like Blender was free. That was it.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Like Blender was free. And you're like, let's try it. It was 2.5.4 or 3. They had just done a big UI refresh. In fact, Blender had just done this big old.
Because 3 was a really ugly interface back in the day. It was like that gray. So.
Oh yeah. This I think we got on 2.5 though, because I think there's like a big change on 2.5, and so that's the one that we got into. But then we just decided, you know what, this feels right to us, and we're gonna give it a whirl. And we couldn't find a rigging artist. People didn't know how to rig with it. It was so weird, man. But over time, taught skills, learned it. And, now I teach it on, it's no longer lynda.com. It used to be lynda.com. Mm-hmm. But now I teach it on LinkedIn Learning, formerly lynda.com. And it's just funny to see that evolution. Yet when I was like Activision and when I was at other places, I was like the Maya guy. I taught Maya to everybody. I was like the Maya TD. I was all Maya. And now, now I'm all Blender. I haven't opened Maya in I don't know how long. I don't know how to do stuff in it. So, I don't know it. But yeah. So, anyways, that was it. It was just free. To be honest with you, it was just free. So we just decided that let's try it. What else can we lose? Yeah. So, yeah, it was good. It was good. I have to admit, Blender has gotten so much more professional, and I think that really, really helps. Mm-hmm. I think that really, really helps. So that's been my biggest help is how much it's been upgraded. Epic doing their Blender add-on has been a huge help. So yeah, I'm a total convert. I tell everybody to do it.
Yeah, actually, I watched your talk on Blender Los Angeles showing how the Epic stuff integrated, which I'd recommend anybody watching, because you really kind of broke down how it is kind of, they made it a lot easier to make a game because of that, the grant and the integration. So it was fun to see you break all that down.
Oh, I appreciate that. That was a really, I was trying to think. That was a pretty good one. We do this Blender conference every year, this virtual one, right? And it's like 18 hours long, and there's Blender artists all over the world who do it. And I always think that that's really cool. This year we had a guy from like Nigeria come in and present about his work in Blender, and he's a damn good sculptor. Like, how cool is that it could like cross boundaries and be used, anywhere. So I don't know. I just think it's awesome. And it's free and it's tiny. It's like a small download relative to what Maya used to be. Maybe it's big now, but
and there's so much information. Like, it's not like you get lost. There's
sure.
so much stuff. You can literally teach yourself anything on both Unreal and on Blender. So it's, anybody who wants to start getting into games or even cinematics, because that they all kind of translate together too. It's like they're making it as easy as they can for you. So
yeah. It's funny, like there's a guy on Reddit who posted like, I want to use Unity on the Unreal subreddit. And then vice versa on the Unity stuff, he posted like, I want to use Unreal. And I hate that, because we used to get, well, not hate's too strong of a word. That's kind of like a fruit fly in your room. You're like, oh Christ, get out of here. We used to get that so much in the Blender world. where people were like, I don't know, I use Maya only, or I don't know, Maya 3D Max and Blender, or like it's just so nonsense. The software really doesn't matter. We've used Unity; it's great, no problems with it. Unreal was free at the time, and we just got really good at it, and so that's it. There's no other difference. So yeah. If anyone listens, and if you're having a software debate in your head and you're listening to this, just pick one. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. They name the button something different, they name the command something different. The button's generally the same. Just pick one, So everything uses an up, down, left, right arrow. There's a move, a rotate, and a scale. They all have code in them. If statements exist in both programs, so just pick one, and you'll be done with it. But
and even Blueprint, like, again, people don't realize how much Blueprint is it sets you up for success. It's a very simple thing. You can add your Unreal, and then boom, you're already a way step ahead than you've ever been before. So.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things where if you're just debating what direction to go, pick something. Like you're better off learning something than just sitting there and never moving.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Yeah, if you get stuck on software, you'll never get anywhere. But if you do get stuck on software, then you should download the Blobkin Blaster VR demo, which is live on the Steam store.
Well, and going back to the game, I love the fact that you guys have kind of created something where obviously the art style is going to be reminiscent for kids and they're going to love it. But the core component you're talking about is the fact that these blobkins are not only your health, but your ammo and almost like your currency to upgrade things in a sense. And that's kind of a cool dynamic of like, well, how do you decide how to use them? You just shoot them all out, end up with lower health because of it, or
it does make balancing the game rather tricky. I'm a data table kind of guy, and someone had made I don't know where, Game Dev, Gamma Sutra, someone had made a post about like making a game with spreadsheets. And I love it. Like, I love spreadsheets. Run a business, you gotta love spreadsheets. So
former economics major in you.
Yeah, right. I love it. So everything's a spreadsheet. The health, the attack, the speed, all as much as possible is the spreadsheet. So Jason, who's my fellow co-designer, we've got like 10 different spreadsheets. So like, we're going to change this thing, but that'll affect this thing, which will affect this thing, which will drive that thing. So it's just interesting and balancing. It's rather tricky. One of the biggest critical things from the Steam Festival was like, it's a little too frenetic. It's a little bit too much going on. And are like, oh, right, because we are the only ones who've been playing this game for a year, and it's not hard enough for us. So we keep every incremental build, we make it harder, and we adjust the data tables to make it even harder. So it's a challenge for us, and it's virtually impossible for a first timer. So
that's
where
we just need to bust out and use some of the benefits of the co-working space you're in with the Orlando game space.
Yeah.
Get you some fresh eyeballs to test that thing.
Oh, for sure. Actually, very soon we're gonna do like one last beta test in July before August, and we're not gonna release all the levels, just the first 2 levels again, just to test, because it's just interesting. This is our first big mass public one. We've had a small beta group, but to have like 500 people play the game and all tell you generally the same thing, you're like, okay, make it a little easier. Surprisingly, though, we had a few parents send in their kids playing, like as a video and everything. One of them, I was like, could you just film them playing the whole thing? And he did. He sent it all in. And this is really interesting. He is so good at it. The parent is not, but he was super good at it. So now it's created a little bit of trickery. Do we want to make it easier, but then it's too easy? I don't know. So we're gonna make it a little easier. And I guess to button up the whole thing on the game, when you beat the main story mode, you unlock Red Tide mode, which is like an impossible, endless amount of waves kind of thing, where
like a nightmare mode.
Yeah, and because we have multiple levels, we have 6 zones that you travel through in the story mode. You don't load through them or anything. We're just going to level string them in, so it's kind of like a bunch of bubbles rush at you, and now you're in the next map. And then it's just should feel like almost like a roguelike, where you have 1 life and you have hopefully see how far you can make it. So yeah, that is Blobkin Blaster, August 11th, 2021. It's my sales pitch. I'm done.
I hope I hear your voice going red tide mode or whatever.
Red tide. I love this mic. It's so good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
No, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything you would you kind of like to share with the audience before we kind of like wrap up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think depends who's listening, right? If you want to get started, it's free. There's no reason not to. If you want to get a job, don't just, if you're working at a dead end job, I mean, so many of us are there and have been there. There's a benefit in polishing your demo reel and everything and or your code base and everything. But like, there's also, I think, and this is just purely hypothetical, I think you'll find more benefit doing a game jam and finding a buddy to team up with if you're a programmer and artist or vice versa, and just make something. I think there's a bigger benefit. Going back to what we said way earlier, we get a lot of people who send in their cover letters and a giant email and resumes and everything. And, I immediately do three things. I copy their name and I Google search it. And I click on their ArtStation, their LinkedIn profile, and anything else I find interesting, like were they part of a game jam? Is there a demo reel on Vimeo or whatever? If they're an artist, you better have an ArtStation account. If you're a programmer or a developer, were you in a game jam? Have you released anything? Like where's your stuff? And absolutely very biased because I teach for LinkedIn, but I also checked out their LinkedIn. Like, what do you do? What have you done? Doesn't matter if you worked at a grocery store. That's cool. But like worked at this game or did this game jam, did that game jam, came in third at the, like, just interesting stuff. Because I guess cover letters are completely worthless. They just care about your demo reel and your like your work. Like, what have you done? So, and I think that's more valuable, frankly. So, go for that.
Well, and I think that right there is why Kunal Patel from the Orlando Game Space pushes so heavily to do all the game jams we do in Orlando.
Oh, for sure.
Whether it's with, the healthcare industry or the space industry, or just like the general global game jam that everybody does. And the crazy thing about game jams anymore is you can find one going on almost any time on the internet.
Yeah.
And you can work remote on these things,
Yeah, you don't need to be there. You don't need to be part of that or whatever. Like you don't need to physically be somewhere, like you were saying earlier, like in GDC or San Francisco. In fact, it's the reverse. Everybody wants you to be remote, so take advantage of it. Do it.
Also, learning how to bop through communities will be important because if you're a designer, like, art, whatever, you can pop into Unreal forums and find people who need art. If you're a guy who knows how to build games, you pop into any one of like Blender or something, you'll find people who have art and just want to be a part of a game. You just got to learn to bounce around between those communities.
Agreed.
I think it's always one of the funny things. Every once in a while, I'll go to FIA, which is a local video game program out of UCF or grad school. And they do this thing called Venture Track, which is basically like letting them kind of run almost their own independent company for 6 months,
Oh, wow.
Where they kind of just work on a project to put it out. And it's funny to see because you'll see there's a team that's got like 6 artists on it. And there's a team sometimes that's got like 5 like level designers. And you're always just kind of like, maybe you guys should swap around a little,
balance.
It would balance the teams out better, But then you also always see like, wow, it's cool what 5 really decent animators can do and what 5 really good level designers can do with what their main core skill is,
Yeah.
So they can still do something pretty awesome that kind of highlights what it is that they're good at.
I love that. Yeah, Ringling. I don't know if they do this. It was one of the art schools where they put you in a team so you can have like 2 or 3 people make a short film as your senior thesis. And I think it was Ringling. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I always thought that's great because it is a team sport.
I think FIA makes them all do it for capstone. And then if like your last year, you don't have an off-site internship, it's kind of more if they put you into the venture track to, again, give you some real world experience of what it's like to work as a team and put something out there, and just shipping something, like
maybe that should be the last
that
point.
matters,
Yeah, actually, that's something I kind of forgot about to even really touch on the concept of shipping, which is like, listen, we're a tiny developer and we'd really love to get this game with tons of features and gameplay, but yeah, it's really important to ship a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important. Just ship a thing, ship a product, get it done, and ship it. There's a ton of value in that, and rather than chasing and never finishing and chasing new ideas. There's such value in just, I'm done, I shipped it. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's just good. And yeah, that's a good one. Ship, get it done, get it out the door. I'm really talking to myself at this point, but giving myself advice. But yeah,
no, that's awesome. No, but I really want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been fantastic.
Thanks for having me. So excited.
And we'll make sure to kind of put a way to contact you in the description for the episode when it goes up.
Yeah, it's super simple. It's hi@bravelunch.com. It goes to me. So, and then all of our content is at Brave Lunch, just one word, no fancy letters or numbers, just Brave Lunch. We really like Twitter and TikTok, so I'm on both of those. But we're on all of them. So come say hi.
Awesome. All right. And that's a wrap.